The Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and your local cable provider presents Cable Reports. Join us now as Cable Reports brings you up to date on current issues facing the Commonwealth through discussions with your local legislators and other policymakers from across Virginia.
Welcome from the General Assembly and the City of Richmond. I'm Woody Evans for Cable Reports and Chantel. We are pleased to have Senator Frank Ruff with us today. Welcome, sir.
Woody, glad to be back with you.
Tell us about the 15th District. It is the largest district in the Commonwealth, as I understand it.
Well, when I first inherited it, I like to tell folks it was 4 times the size of Rhode Island. But when people look at the map, Rhode Island looks kind of small, so that really didn't say anything. So I now describe it as, ask them, do they know where Jamestown is? And they say yes. And I say, well, it's 1 mile across the river from Jamestown to 8 miles from Martinsville.
Wow, that's a pretty big area, so you have a lot of windshield time to see all of your constituents.
That's very, very true. I spend a lot of time in the car.
So what's happening in the Senate? I know that you still chair the General Laws and Technology Committee and you're on Finance, but I also understand there are 2 vacancies yet to be filled there. There was a special election that's subject to a recall vote. There is an election scheduled for the 21st in Loudoun County to fill a seat that was vacated by the new Attorney General. That's correct, and we just don't know what the results of those are going to be. Recounts don't often change, but they always have the potential to. The one up in Loudoun County, nobody's making any predictions because it's a 3-way race. It could go any way. But therefore it could be a 2020 Republican-Democrat split, or we could be a 21-19, or we could be a 22-18. We just don't know. So we're not worrying about that. We're just focused on moving the business along as professionally as we can. Well, General Laws and Technology has a pretty broad jurisdiction. Why don't you give us an idea of the kind of legislation that comes through your committee? Well, we kind of get a little bit of everything that nobody else gets. We have a lot of bills that deal with gambling issues, lottery, bingo, casinos. We get bills that deal with procurement of things. We get a few bills that deal with dead bodies. We do just about everything. And how many members of your committee and how many subcommittees? We have 15 members on the committee, and then I have it split into 2 subcommittees that if it's a complicated bill that may need some massaging, we send it to a subcommittee. If not, we want to hear it in the full committee and just get it over with as much as possible. And of course, the Finance Committee is a very important one because you're dealing with fiscal issues of the Commonwealth. There's always more desire than there is ability to pay for it. So the governor puts in his priorities, then each legislator gets a chance to offer what they think is a great idea, and then once that process finishes, then we have a new governor this year who will decide that he has some different priorities, and so it'll be a back and forth ongoing thing with the House and the Senate, and then with the new governor as we go forward. So what's the outlook, the financial outlook for the state going forward? I understand that Rick Brown, who's the Secretary of Finance, a holdover appointee, gave a presentation recently. What did he have to say, if you were privy to that? Well, Rick is the closest we have to an expert. He's been at it for 40 years in some capacity of understanding the finance of the Commonwealth. So I think it was great that Governor McAuliffe chose to keep him in that position. It appears that we're going to inch along with slight increases, but we're not going to see any booms for another year or two. It's just that's the nature of the recession, and this particular recession is not bounced back as much as people had hoped. And some of that are the issues. A lot of those are the issues in Washington that have not been resolved, that deal with health care and do I hire new employees or not hire new employees, and that type of issue that we don't have any control over, but we just have to live with those.
And one of the new appointees is from Lunenburg, you told me. Maurice Jones is his name, I take it. He's the new Secretary of Commerce. What impact will that have for Southside, you think?
Well, we hope it'll have a lot of impact. Of course, he's going to have statewide responsibilities, but Maurice has been a superstar most of his life, from student body president in Hampton, Sydney, to management at Virginia Pilot, to I guess it's assistant or deputy head of HUD, Housing and Urban Development in Washington. So he's a well-rounded person, and we think that it's nice to have somebody from our areas with roots in our area to guide us. He understands rural Virginia.
Right. As you and I were talking earlier about the unemployment situation in the 15th District, you told me that Martinsville has the highest rate of unemployment.
Right. A lot of our counties are hovering just below or just above 10% unemployment.
10%.
And that's very difficult makes life difficult for all of us. We're doing better in the eastern part of the district with Rolls-Royce and with Fort Lee activity, but it's difficult in all of the counties.
So how is the community college there helping out in terms of retraining individuals who need to find employment?
Well, the community colleges are doing as much as they can. We've got a structure in the community college system where they get their funding based on academic degree-seeking lines. A lot of us believe, and I've been working on it the last couple of years, how do we bring job skill training, which are usually non-credit courses, up to the same type of financial structure, and that's not been an easy thing. And regrettably, after the governor had put together his budget, the chancellor and I sat down and figured out a plan that essentially offers a bonus to community colleges when they teach if they add a new non-credit skills program that has an industry certification, then that community college could receive additional money. It doesn't make any difference how many people take the class. It doesn't make any difference if they all get straight A's. If they don't get certification, that independent certification, then they're not eligible for that money. And we think that'll kind of take it out of the realm of 16-week semesters and that type thing, which all college people like to think about and talk about. But if you need welders and you have a young person in their 30s who's got a child or two and gets laid off, he can't really look at a year away. Right. He needs a shorter time frame. Doing it this way, say he was to go into the welding program, you could create a program where you work with him 8 hours a day for 4 or 5 weeks. He could get certification. He could get back into a good profession, making good money very, very quickly. And most people can see over the horizon of a month, but they can't. It's a little more difficult to see over a horizon of a year.
Right. So more emphasis on vocational training,
exactly,
so to speak.
Exactly.
Yeah. What about the emphasis that the previous governor put on science, technology, engineering, and math, and health? Certainly, those are very important disciplines, and we ought to continue to pursue those. But I take it that at least in the area you represent, vocational training is probably critical.
Well, yes, but that vocational training has a lot of those STEM factors.
Right.
True. When the Governor McDonald made that State of the Commonwealth speech, the Monday after he was sworn in, I quickly told him, you should have said certification, not just college degrees,
right.
but certification. He said, I meant that. Well, you didn't say that, but the reality is that with Rolls-Royce, for every engineer they need 15 skilled people that are making more than a lot of college graduates making. Sometimes it's twice as much as college graduates are making. Right. People who are machinists, people who, and all that requires those STEM skills.
Right.
You have to know that math, you have to know the science and the technology. So it all fits together, but you need it at different levels.
Right, and of course there's still the opportunity there for those who are able to take advantage of it, of a 2-year degree, and then with the 2+2 program, to the extent they want to go forward with one of our institutions of higher learning and can afford it. If they have a certain grade point average, they're almost guaranteed admission.
Yes, that you've got that, but not to keep bringing up Rolls-Royce,
right.
But at Danville Community College they have a great precision machinery program.
Okay.
Rolls-Royce has gone to Danville, hired some of those people, and they immediately tell them that we will help pay for your additional studies to get a bachelor's degree, because if you've got a good person, you want him to be as advanced as possible.
Now, I understand a few years ago, in fact, former Delegate Joe May, who happens to be running in the race in Loudoun County, opened up a small business, I believe it was in Danville.
Yes, a good business.
Yeah,
they've done a great job. He practices what he preaches.
Mm-hmm.
When we said, hey, you know, Southern Virginia needs jobs. We've got people who want to work and willing to work, and so he set up an operation there, and they hire a significant number of people, and they've been very pleased with the work ethic. And so that's been a model for some other companies who've come in and are doing some higher level manufacturing there now.
So tobacco is gone, the textile industry is gone. Is Bassett Furniture still around?
Bassett Furniture is still around. The tobacco is still there, but it's just changed quite a bit.
Right.
It's still an important part of the economy. It's not done the old-fashioned way where you had small farmers and you sold at auction. It's generally done under contract, and it's generally larger farmers now. So
besides state and local government, who are some of the major employers in your district?
Well, in the Danville area, you have Goodyear Tire.
Mm-hmm.
You've got Owen, Illinois, who makes bottles.
Mm-hmm.
In Mecklenburg County, you have Microsoft and Hewlett-Packard both have data centers. The cloud hangs over Boynton. In South Boston, you have ABB, which makes generators and that type of electrical, big electrical things.
Right. I noticed in your newsletter on your website, and by the way, I would recommend that to anyone. It's a great website full of a lot of really good information about what's happening here. Notice that you have had an opportunity to meet with the governor. You talked about the new Secretary of Commerce. What other things did you tell him that are critically needed in your district?
Well, we quickly agreed that economic development is the most important thing that we need to focus on. And you know, and obviously there are issues we're going to agree and issues we're going to disagree. Let's focus on those that we do agree. And he is excited about economic development. So I think that enthusiasm will take him a long way.
So how are the counties in your district faring? Because as we know, as a result of the recession, property values just went in the tank, and counties rely heavily on the real estate tax to finance a lot of services. Have things rebounded, or are they about the same?
It's been a slow recovery, and it depends on where you are. The district is so long that I can't make one statement. I can tell you that on the eastern end, It's south of the Petersburg-Hopewell area because of Fort Lee, because of Rolls-Royce. It's pretty good. It's pretty poor in some other areas. So I guess you could say it was okay overall, but there are a lot of pockets and a lot of problems. But hopefully, I'm an optimist, and I'm hopeful that we'll have people looking, and I know that we do have some looking at starting up operations. We want to do more with encouraging local entrepreneurs, and that's one failing we have in our school system, is that we've allowed people to focus more on where are you going to work, or who are you going to work for, or what are you going to do, and we really need to do more to say, hey, you got a brain, you got two hands,
right.
You can do some things. Think it through. What do you want to do? What do you want to make happen? And because we've got good folks.
Now, you mentioned Fort Lee. Are there any other military installations in your district besides Fort Lee?
Fort Pickett is in the district, and that's 54,000 acres. And the Army National Guard has done a great job of rehabilitating a lot of that, and we're very positive on that. Federal government has talked about having a training center for State Department that would train those folks who guard our embassies around the world. But that's been a little slow moving, but we're still hopeful that will come.
And of course, like the rest of the Commonwealth, there's, I don't want to say significant, but there is reliance upon those military installations for employment. Yes,
that's a big part of Virginia's economy. Between Tidewater, where you have the obvious naval and air facilities, to Northern Virginia, where you get from the FBI to the contractors the defense contractors that are focused on the D.C. area.
You have many veterans who are now returning from the theaters of war that have existed over the last 10 to 15 years, coming back home, who are at least attempting to start new businesses, or at least attempting to finish their schooling.
They're getting out, and some of them are coming back because of limited opportunities since the recession started. A lot of them are going to end up somewhere else. So we hope that we can do some things that those skills that they learned in the military would be of value, and we could get them back.
And I believe the residency requirements that apply to other citizens don't necessarily apply to them in terms of their ability to matriculate either at a junior college or one of our institutions of higher learning.
That's right. We make some special arrangements for those folks who've served our country.
Right. Now tell us a little bit about what's going on K through 12. There's this move now to re-examine the standards of learning that have been in existence for quite a while. By the way, had a conversation with Delegate Joseph Yost, who's from Giles County. He's the youngest member of the General Assembly, by the way. He told me he had actually taken one of the SOLs. He's so young. But in any event, have you been hearing much about that beyond what's going on here?
Well, you hear all about that from teachers a lot. When the standards of learning were developed a decade before we started testing them. And we really didn't, teachers kind of ignored them to some degree until they were actually being requested to test people on that. As often is the case, sometimes it was misguided. The goal was not to do damage to that child, or really to do to that teacher, but really to get a better understanding, was that classroom moving forward as it should be? And if not, then there may have to be an adjustment made. But it became a challenge to make sure that everybody passed the SOL and test, and then so you've had way too much repetitive stuff
that rather than trying to bring in new items that everybody knew was not going to be on the test, but were important in the real world. So the goal, we started it last year when I suggested we didn't need quite so much money, so to spend some education money not on testing history and something else in the third grade, but let's use that money for something more productive. And the world didn't come crashing down, so the goal now is to try to streamline it a little more. We still want to maintain high standards. We've got some of the best standards in the country, but we don't want to waste so much time measuring. You don't want to spend more time measuring what you've learned than you're actually learning.
Right, and I think your point earlier about the need for kids to learn how to critically think versus just rote memorization of facts that may not be used at all during their lifetime is much more important.
Not unless you're going to be on Jeopardy.
There you go. Now, transportation. Congratulations for what was done last year in terms of a transportation bill. To what extent is that going to have an impact on your district?
Well, the fact that we took part of that tax off of gasoline and put it on sales really serves our area well, because we have an older population who've already gotten a lot of things. They don't buy as much as younger people do. But a lot of my folks also drive either to Lynchburg, to Greensboro, to Raleigh, or to Richmond, or to Tidewater for their jobs. So we probably spend a higher percentage of our income on transportation than some of the other communities where you don't have to drive to get to a good job. So that helps us in that from that perspective also. And it's gotten some projects moving forward that have been a challenge. It's awfully hard to complain about tall grass growing on the side of the road because folks in Northern Virginia think you're crazy because they've got traffic jams. But from our perspective, something running out from that tall grass, right, whether it be a deer or a dog or whatever, your natural reaction is to jerk, and that causes wrecks. If you look at the number of young people who die on the road, or people who die on the road in Charlotte County, we probably have a higher percentage there than anywhere in the state.
Really?
Per population. And because of those type characteristics that, yes, you may be tied up in traffic jams elsewhere, but the challenges in rural areas are real and a little more subtle.
And so agribusiness is still important, and if my memory serves me correctly, the diesel, there's an exemption for farm equipment.
Correct, yes.
Yes.
Yes, they already bought off-road diesel, which didn't have the same tax on it.
What about the Virginia retirement system? As a member of finance, I'm sure that's another issue that the Commonwealth is wrestling with because there was money, I believe, that was borrowed from the retirement system a number of years ago that has to be paid back. The localities have a responsibility, at least in terms of their teachers, to contribute to the retirement system. How is that all playing out in your district?
Well, it's a strain, financial strain, but it's also a responsibility that they have. When the economy went down half a dozen years ago, they were very appreciative of the fact that we reduced the numbers, so they didn't have to raise taxes. But whenever you delay something, at some point you have to catch up, and we're in that catch-up process, and we're making a good progress towards that catch-up.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but is the Southside Training Center being phased out? I think that's as a result of a settlement with the Department of Justice and the need to move people into a community setting versus an institutional setting.
Yes, that one is one of the first ones to go. We weren't crazy about the idea of that settlement, but the federal government had already challenged how Georgia keeps them, so Georgia went to court and they lost. So that was pretty clear that we were going to have a tough time beating the federal government. So the
administration made the decision that we would phase out some of our facilities. That puts people in houses, group homes situation. Hopefully that will be positive. In some cases they're going to be not so pleasant, and that's going to be high profile. We've already had a couple of those, but that's just something we'll have to figure out a long-term solution on.
And a lot of the residents are people who've lived there through their adult lives now, as I understand it.
Yes, and I think a lot of those people who've been there, in the most worst cases, are going to they're still going to have some place. But there are, in various times in our history, we have chosen to do institutionalize some folks who may or may not have needed to be.
Right.
So it's a one-at-a-time situation of looking at what's the right thing for this person.
Right. Mental health is back in the news as a result of a tragedy of one of your colleagues from Bath County. What's likely to happen there in terms of reforms?
I'm not sure. I think there'll be some structural changes in how do you get how the people that are actually touching those folks, giving them a little more time to make decisions, and giving them a better networking system to find bids when necessary. You're not going to solve all the problems. Right. We just have to accept that reality. There is black and there's white, but there's an awful lot of gray, and that gray is in various shades. Just so there are going to be decisions made by humans. Some of them are going to be right. We're going to institutionalize some folks that we didn't really have to. We're going to not do some that we should have done, but we won't know until it's over that we've made the wrong decisions in some cases.
Yeah, it's hard to maintain that balance between the civil rights of a person who may have issues versus a longer short-term period of detention, for example.
Yep, that's just a tough nut.
Yeah, we got about a minute left. One of the issues that the governor and the General Assembly don't agree on is Medicaid expansion. So why don't you just give us a 30-second high-level view of where that stands from your perspective?
Well, we cannot successfully just add more people to the system that we have and not change the system. That's a losing scenario. But we have folks who don't have health care, and we've got to figure out solutions to how to deal with that without bankrupting everybody. There are several options out there. We're looking at the Arkansas model, the Kentucky model, and there's not enough history on them to feel comfortable with them yet. But in the Arkansas case, they made the decision to privatize the Medicaid and expand it, and that allows you to do some things that the current structure does not do. It's not a healthy situation when you require somebody, when you see a patient come in that has 4 or 5 problems, and you only deal with one problem and tell them to come back next week. That's not efficient. It doesn't help him or her. You need to figure out a system where everybody's worried about that individual's health, and how do you get him out of the rut he's in.
Great. We're going to have to wrap it up. Thank you for being here, Senator Ruff.
Woody, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for watching Cable Reports, brought to you by the Virginia Cable Telecommunications Association and Chantel. Until next time, I'm Woody Evans.
All right. You have a good one. Take care.